The Israeli Defense Force has taken Mount Hermon from Syria. We already know that Mount Hermon is where the fallen angels came down and took human women. It's also where Jesus said that the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. So what does this mean that Mount Hermon has been taken by the IDF? I'm going to play a little bit of this clip.
אני פה בשיח הרמון עם שר הביטחון, הרמטכ"ל, אלוף פיקוד צפון, ראש השב"כ ומפקדים בכירים. אנחנו פה בחיתוך מצב כדי להחליט על היערכות ישראל במקום החשוב הזה עד שימצא סידור אחר שמבטיח את ביטחון ישראל. זה מעלה אצלי נוסטלגיה. הייתי פה לפני 53 שנים עם החיילים שלי בסיירת מטכ"ל. המקום לא השתנה, באותו מקום. אבל החשיבות שלו לביטחון ישראל רק קיבלה משנה תוקף בשנים האחרונות, ובמיוחד בשבועות האחרונים, עם האירועים הדרמטיים שמתרחשים כאן מתחתנו בסוריה. אנחנו נקבע את הסידור הטוב ביותר שיבטיח את ביטחוננו.
So that's quite the propaganda piece. I would say. But what does that mean? First, we must accept that the current government of Israel is not the church that Jesus was referring to. So I'm going to make this a long video, and I'm going to play my video titled Jerusalem instead of asking people to go back and listen to that, because I did a lot of research for that one and it was a major aha moment for me, and I'm just not sure if people will find it. And then I'm going to play another video I did about Mount Hermon and some of the artifacts that were found there. Regarding this Jerusalem video that I'm about to play, I hope people don't get mad at me. I accept that there are Hebrew people in Israel who are under the protection of God and will make up the 144,000 that is biblical and prophetic, but so are the Rev 29ers. So I'm not anti-you-know-what. I'm just trying to figure out what is going on currently and giving the factual historical evidence of who founded current-day Israeli government. So here goes.
Both. But for this video, I'm going to talk about the temple in Jerusalem. And I've already talked about British imperialism in general in other videos, but now I want to talk about it in Israel and Jerusalem, because there's plenty to point out. So here goes. It was the British Jews who established Zionism in Israel, and they did so in collaboration with the current British Crown. So let's look at this. Let's look at Lord Balfour. Lord Balfour declared the reestablishment of Israel as a nation in 1917 during World War I, in which was a support for a Jewish national home in Palestine. He declared it. So he made it known this is going to happen, and it did happen. So that's a lot of power. He declared it to Lord Rothschild, British Jew and banker and member of the Royal Society. So who's Lord Balfour? Well, he's a member of the Order of the Garter. And that's the highest level, which according to Tim Cohen and John Pounders and others, we've gone over some other members of the Order of the Garter, and definitely the British monarch is based at the head of that order and also at the head of British Freemasonry. Freemasonry in general. But Lord Balfour has all these other titles, including member of the Royal Society, etc. See all these letters after his name. So he's a big deal in the British royalty. So then he declares it to Baron Lord Rothschild, who's a British Jew, banker, politician, and member of the Royal Society, and head of the Zionist movement. Rothschild then became president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews from 1925 to 1926. And the Board of Deputies of British Jews is a Jewish communal organization in the UK established in 1760 by a group of Sephardic Jews, liaisoning with the British government. A little bit about Sephardic Jew. Sephardi means Hispanic or Spanish, derived from the Sephard or biblical location. The location of the biblical Sephard points to the Iberian Peninsula, and then the westernmost outpost of Phoenicia. Jewish presence in Iberia is believed to have started during the reign of King Solomon, whose excise imposed taxes on the Iberian exiles. But I think today it's just more commonly referred to as the European Jews. So Lord Rothschild was head of the British Zionist community, the Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. So what is that? The Zionist Federation of Britain and Ireland, also known as the British Zionist Federation or simply the Zionist Federation, is an umbrella organization for the Zionist movement in the UK, representing more than 30 organizations and over 50,000 affiliated members. It was established in 1899 to campaign for a permanent homeland for the Jewish people. Okay, so now let's look at what happened after 1917 when that was declared. For one, they had a major thoroughfare in Jerusalem named after King George V. That was in 1924. Then, Palestine under British mandate. What is that? Mandatory Palestine was a geopolitical entity established in 1920, and in 1948, the region of Palestine under the terms of the League of Nations mandate for Palestine. The League of Nations became the UN. During the First World War, from 1914 to 1918, an Arab uprising against Ottoman rule and British Empire's Egyptian expeditionary force drove the Ottoman Turks out of the Levant. The United Kingdom had agreed in the McMahon-Husson correspondence that it would honor Arab independence if the Arabs revolted against the Ottoman Turks, but in the end, the UK and France divided the area under the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and that was an act of betrayal in the eyes of the Arabs. So, okay, Britain and the League of Nations, which became the UN, decided that area was going to be Palestine, but under a British mandate. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's look at the High Commissioners of Palestine under the British mandate. The appointer is the British monarch. So let's look at that. So let's look at the High Commissioners of Palestine under the British mandate, which again was from 1920 after the Balfour Declaration to 1948 when Israel became a nation. And here they are. These people are appointed by the monarch, and here they are. They're all knights. Sir, 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 sir. All of them. So they were all the commissioners in Israel under mandate by the crown leading up to when Israel became a nation. Then once Israel became a nation during World War II, or right after World War II, every British ambassador to Israel after that was a Knight of the Crown. All these, sir, 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 sir. And even the ones that don't have sir, when you look at them, They are also Knights of the Crown. You can verify that if you need to. Then in 1967, Jerusalem was captured for Israel from Jordan, along with the Gaza Strip and Sinai from Egypt. And this was a result of the Six-Day War. And so let's talk about the Six-Day War. The Six-Day War was fought between June 5th and June 10th of 1967. So 6 days literally is all it was, by Israel and the neighboring states of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The Six-Day War began with a large-scale surprise airstrike by Israel on Egypt and ended with a major victory by Israel and resulted in them getting Jerusalem, claiming Jerusalem for Israel. A number of controversies have arisen out of the causes and conduct of the war, namely whether Israel's action was a preemptive strike justified by the threat of imminent attack by the Arab states or an unjustified and unprovoked attack. This just talks about it, but let's look at the part that's talking about allegations. I'm trying to find it. Sorry. Well, I can't find it, but anyways, there was allegations of military support from the U.S., UK, and the Soviet Union. There have been a number of allegations of direct military support of Israel during the war by the U.S. and the UK, including the supply of equipment, despite an embargo, and the participation of U.S. forces in the conflict. According to Egyptian history textbooks, Israel launched the war with support of Britain and the U.S., portraying Israel as an imperialist stooge of Britain. So Jerusalem was won for Israel as a result of the Six-Day War in 1967. So moving along the timeline, we can see the influence of British Jews, Zionists, Kabbalists, probably the Rev 29ers, on the rest of the Israeli government as well. So let's look at that. Let's look at the Supreme Court building in Israel. And we're aware of this power of the Supreme Court. And this is it. There is an all-seeing eye with a pyramid on top of the Supreme Court building in Israel. And there's a lot of other occult symbolism to the building, also like the entire thing, basically. But I won't go into all that here. Let's read about this. And I'm going to read from a site that I found that I can't hit for some reason from the computer, but I can't hit from my phone, so I'm just going to link it in the description. And it's about the Supreme Court government building in Israel. And it says, in the 1980s, marking 100 years of support from the benefactor Baron Edmund de Rothschild to the Jewish community in Israel. So the Rothschilds, or the British Jews, were financially supporting this since the 1800s, even before the Balfour Declaration. But the Rothschild Foundation approached the Israeli government and offered a donation to construct a new Supreme Court building near the Knesset, which is Israeli parliament, which is also paid for by the Rothschilds. And the legislature building is also funded by the Rothschilds. But anyway, apparently the Rothschilds, in exchange for the funds, got to choose the location and architecture designed for the Supreme Court. So they chose the location and they chose the architecture. And remember how they use architecture. So all these buildings are at the Givat Ram area in Jerusalem, which is an area which includes all the Israel's most important institutions, it says. The Givat Ram is a neighborhood in central Jerusalem, and it is the site of the government complex, which includes many of Israel's most important national institutions, among them the Knesset, or the parliament, and the Supreme Court, which we talked about. But then let's talk about the Knesset, which is parliament. That was also funded by James de Rothschild as a gift to Israel in 1966. And who's James de Rothschild? He is a Crown-appointed deputy lieutenant. And what does that mean? In the UK, a deputy lieutenant is a Crown appointment of one of the several deputies to Lord Lieutenant of the Lieutenant area. In English ceremonial county, a Welsh preserved county, Scottish lieutenant area, or Northern Irish county, borough, county. So that's the Supreme Court and Parliament buildings they've funded, but what else? Let's look at the Bank of Israel, which is also in that area, and I can't see that it was funded by the Rothschilds, but this is weird. It says the current headquarters in Jerusalem was designed by the architecture of Aryeh Sharon. The design resembles an inverted pyramid. It says Aryeh Sharon studied at the Bauhaus School of Architecture. The Bauhaus School is the same school where that guy who made the cosmology star map at Hoover Dam studied. The Hebrew University is another building that says the Board of Governors included. Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, and the Cornerstone Gala ceremony was attended by the Earl of Balfour and Winston Churchill, who's a Druid. And to top it all off, it says that this Givat Ram complex, where all these buildings that I just went over here are located, is apparently, according to archaeological finds, built on top of a location occupied by King Herod, the Mad King, who tried to have Jesus murdered by killing all the babies. It was a 10th Roman legion area, according to archaeological finds, which was founded by Augustus Caesar, the Roman emperor. And remember, they chose the location, the Rothschilds. Okay, so the British Zionists are in cahoots with the Crown, and they funded most of these buildings and the important national institutions. So that's the summary of that little section. And if it's true that all the bloodlines want to be king of Jerusalem still, as Gary Wayne proposes, and I believe it is based on my research, having bared all that out, then it makes perfect sense that the British royals would team up with the Kabbalists, Rev 29ers, as they have, to control Israel and Jerusalem, right? This influence in Israel by the British royals has been planned for a long time. We've just seen that. First, we saw Palestine under British mandate in World War I. Then Israel as a nation in World War II. Then Jerusalem captured in a sketchy way during the Six-Day War. Then Jerusalem declared as capital of Israel because the U.S. Embassy was moved to there from Tel Aviv by Trump. Didn't the Rothschilds' mother say no wars would happen without the approval of her sons or something like that? I couldn't find the quote, but here's another one from another Rothschild. Give me the control of a nation's currency, and I care not who runs the government. And Baron de Rothschild had a famous quote in the 18th century. He's credited with saying, "The time to buy is when there's blood in the streets." And he should know. So my point is that everyone who complains about Zionist Jews in the U.S. and Israel, etc., should also look at the Crown, because they're in cahoots. And why are they in cahoots? Because they want to put their guy on the throne as king of Jerusalem. And that's how this whole thing started, with Arthur Balfour. We just showed that.
So, now, regarding the taking of Mount Hermon, that area is supposed to be controlled by the UN, So, how are they allowing this? Well, I'm assuming that the UN is controlled by the same people as the current Israeli government, and that would be the British witches, which people call as Zionists, but it's no different. And remember that the UN was born out of the ideals of the Lucis Trust, the Lucifer's Publishing Company, which was founded in 1923 by Alice Bailey, a British witch, a theosophist. Bailey is the one that wrote The Externalization of the Hierarchy. To sum that up, she wrote, quote, "The externalization is the process by which the masses are gently prepared for the future as those controlling the world from behind the scenes gradually make themselves known through increasingly explicit signs." End of quote. And that controlling spirit certainly has not changed. If anything, that presence is stronger within the UN organization and everywhere. Now I'm going to play some of an older video that I did about Mount Hermon and some artifacts that were found there that were taken by another one of the British witches. And this has additional information besides Mount Hermon, but I'm going to play the entire thing for context.
Another Knight of the Crown to add to the list of beast system soldiers, and this one is so profound that I almost don't even know where to begin, but he deserves his own video, so here goes. And his name is Sir Charles Warren. See here, he is Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George, Most Honorable Order of the Bath, Fellowship of the Royal Society. He is a Freemason who was the first master of the first lodge. He's also Knight Justice of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem. And this is their insignia, got unicorns on it, lions. But this Sir Charles Warren was a busy little witch soldier, for sure. He did an insane amount of stuff. And I'm going to go over much of it, but the most significant thing was climbing Mount Hermon in 1889 and in exploring ancient temples there and other archaeological sites. But the main ancient temple was called Khazar-in-Tar, and there he found a stone pillar tablet inscribed in an ancient language which is now known as the Mount Hermon inscription. And this is it. And the inscription was translated at that time by Warren to read, "According to the command of the greatest and holy God, those who take an oath proceed from here." But this tablet is connected to the oath taken by the angels under Shemjaza, who took an oath together, bound by a curse, in order to take the wives, as in the book of Enoch. But it's later come to note that Warren's translation had added the term holy in error, and that the name of God referred to on the inscription, it was actually a Hellenized version of Baal and connected with the place name of Baal Hermon, or Lord of Hermon. And this article I will link because it has some excellent details about the true translation done after this Sir Charles Warren initially incorrectly translated it. And this more apt translation, noting the command of the unholy God as opposed to the Holy One, does make logical sense, because that entire area was an area where all the ancient temples were pagan, including and especially Khazar-in-Tar. They're called the Hermonian temples. Okay, where sacrificial altars to ancient gods were found, potentially occupied by the Amorites and the ancient Nephilim tribe in the Bible. And this Sir Charles Warren would have known that, or whoever sent him would have known this, because it was more likely that it was a pagan god or fallen angel, Baal, as the god referred to on that tablet, because of the context of all of them being pagan temples. But still, he or they gave the wrong translation. And why do you think that was? So anyway, this Sir Charles Warren and his cohorts took that tablet down the mountain to London, to the British Museum, which is supposedly housed there still to this day, but no longer displayed to the public. So about these temples, they were sites that were predominantly Roman, but some of the sites have been connected with the high places used for the worship of Baal in the Book of Kings. And apparently this guy had sketched the temple and took photos, but those sketches and photos are extremely difficult to find nowadays. And in fact, that area is now sealed off and guarded by the UN, and it's inaccessible. But the UN building at Mount Hermon is apparently very close to that temple, that same temple where the tablet was found. But it's off limits, it's militarized, and this is it. The UN building, and this looks like the Star of Ishtar. It's got 8 points and a circle. So that was in 1889. So that's kind of the last high-profile thing he did, but there's so much more. And it's insane for one person. It follows the pattern of these knights with all their various talents, kind of like, Elon Musk,
So I changed my mind. I'm not going to play the whole thing telling you all the other things that Sir Charles Warren did. If you want to go back and listen to that video, you can. It's titled Sir Charles Warren. And I had an error in that video. I failed to specify that Sir Charles Warren was master of the first historical research Freemasonic lodge established in London in 1884. So, but what does this mean, though, about the IDF taking Mount Hermon? And why have they been allowed to do it by the UN? Well, based on these patterns that we've seen of the aims of these people, based on those last 2 videos that I just played, I would say that it's something to do with fallen angels and it's prophetic. But I also want to know what you guys think. And I'm going to play this clip again with Netanyahu. And notice that he says Mount Hermon has not changed. And it's nostalgic. And he says he was there 53 years ago. And also notice when I play this that one of these IDF supposed people is grayed out his face. Only one of them. The other faces are shown. And I'm going to wonder why he's shaded out. So I'm going to play this and that'll be the end of the video. I'll play it again.
אני פה בשיח הרמון עם שר הביטחון, הרמטכ"ל, אלוף פיקוד צפון, ראש השב"כ ומפקדים בכירים. אנחנו פה בחיתוך מצב כדי להחליט על היערכות ישראל במקום החשוב הזה עד שימצא סידור אחר שמבטיח את ביטחון ישראל. זה מעלה אצלי נוסטלגיה. הייתי פה לפני 53 שנים עם החיילים שלי בסיירת מטכ"ל. המקום לא השתנה, באותו מקום. אבל החשיבות שלו לביטחון ישראל רק קיבלה משנה תוקף בשנים האחרונות, ובמיוחד בשבועות האחרונים, עם האירועים הדרמטיים שמתרחשים כאן מתחתנו בסוריה. אנחנו נקבע את הסידור הטוב ביותר שיבטיח את ביטחוננו.